one thing I really love about Florida is the sky. And it's funny because my son is like, but everywhere has a sky with trees touching it. And there's just something different about the Florida sky and the trees.
You're listening to The Poetry Table, a segment of the Gather Poets podcast where I take you inside conversations with bold and gutsy poets, exploring the craft choices, the questions, and the lived experiences that shape their poems. I'm your host, Maria Giesbrecht, a poet and the founder of Gather Poets, a writing community for poets worldwide. Today, my guest is Nicole Zwolinski. Nicole is the author of the forthcoming poetry collection Motherhead, published in summer 2026 by Finishing Line Press. She has been published in Feminine Collective, Firewords Quarterly, and many more. Nicole was shortlisted for the Central Avenue Poetry Prize and will have 2 poems featured in their 2026 anthology. Welcome to the podcast, Nicole. I'm so excited you're here. How are you feeling today?
Good. Happy New Year.
Yes, Happy New Year.
I'm super thrilled to be here with you today.
I can't wait to talk more about your poem. We have so much to talk about, but before we actually talk about the craft choices and maybe some of the inspiration behind the poem, I was wondering if you might start us off with a beautiful, lovely reading.
Yes, I would love to. Let me pull it up here. My poem is called Looking Up Lightens. Palms and pines garnish the edges of the sky as whirls of clouds marble through the blue, a peaceful escape from the chaos below.
Thank you so much, Nicole. It's so short and so sweet, but there's an air of like almost a weightlessness to it that I really love. I was wondering if you might want to talk us through some of the word choice. So when I'm listening to you read it, I really love the way that like palm and pine sounds together, and then also whirls of clouds. Like to me, those are really like euphonic sounds, but then the cloud has like a little bit of contrast that I really like there. When you are writing your poem, or especially when you're writing this one, Nicole, how do you think about what words you want to use in a poem and what are the right words, and how does that come to you?
Well, I do love alliteration, so pairing together
Mm.
poems and pines worked with that. But also, I think part of that poem emerges from I live in Florida currently, and I've only lived here 4.5 years. And
Mhm.
I think I was really surprised to see pine trees with palm trees. Like I kind of thought pines were a northern thing, which is probably really stupid to think, but that's what I just was very surprised to see these palms and pine trees mixed together. So that kind of was the starter for the poem, just seeing these two juxtapositions, things that I think of as exclusively north and exclusively south. Um, and then the fact that there was the alliteration there was really fun.
Yeah, I think it's cool because the alliteration is complementary, the P and the P, but then the idea of the two kinds of trees is not complementary. So I love that, like, at the same time, you're accomplishing contrast, but also, like, well, I'm not sure what the right word is. It's escaping my mind right now, but it feels like cohesion and like contrast at the same time.
Yeah,
Uh, so I love that. Do you remember where you were when you were writing this poem, Nicole?
I do. I was walking on a path that we have by our house, and it kind of goes through some neighborhoods, and then there's a lot of trees. There's some preserves where we live, so that helps keep the nature in our neighborhood, which is really nice. And when I was walking, like my grandma was really ill. She was in the process of dying, which for me, I didn't realize. Well, my grandpa had died a couple years before, and so kind of went through that process of how it was like a long, torturous descent to death, which I never knew growing up because we were so sheltered from death and dying. Like we were told, "Oh yeah, your great grandpa just fell asleep on the couch and never woke up." So we were like, "Oh, okay, that's what dying is." Um, so I think I was just kind of like walking and struggling with. how is the world still going on? My grandma's dying. It's kind of like when you go to a funeral and it's a beautiful day, and then you see all these people bustling around doing, living their life, going to work, and you're like, how is everybody acting normal? There's tragedy here. So, I mean, there's a lot of that going on around in life in general where it's just very stressful. And so walking through this path, observing nature and seeing the palms and the pines, and I'm like, gosh, that's so beautiful. And one thing I really love about Florida is the sky. And it's funny because my son is like, but everywhere has a sky with trees touching it. And there's just something different about the Florida sky and the trees. And maybe it is the palms and the pines are together. And the way they just kind of garnish the edge of the skyline really um, evoked this poem out of me, which is um, unique for me because I don't typically write short poems like this. And I just kind of let that come out of me. And then I'm like, and that's it. There's no more, which
Yeah.
normally I get like a page or more and then have to go in and cut and figure out where to edit it. And this was kind of like, this is a short one. And I don't normally write short poems. So
Hmm.
it was
Yeah,
interesting.
and writing a short poem, I think, is ironically no small feat.
No.
Um, Often I find that short poems are a lot harder to write than long poems. Um, and I think it's not necessarily because of craft. Like some people might say, oh, it's because you have so much less to work with, so you have to make every word like really count. And yeah, you can argue that, but I think it's more about confidence because I think like a short poem really asks of you to let it go, and you
Mhm.
kind of have to like trust it in a way that you don't really have to with a long poem, because a long poem gives you so much space to kind of practice confidence. You have so many lines to get confident about the poem, but with a short poem like this, like yours is 5 lines, you after 5 lines you kind of have to just like trust and let the poem go. And I love that you're saying that that was your intuition,
Yeah.
was that you just had to like this poem has said what it needs to say and it's enough.
Yeah.
I
And
think
that
that's really
I don't
beautiful.
I don't normally get short poems like that, and I don't think I've written a short poem since. And that is a huge challenge for me to be able to like not word vomit all over the page and and feel satisfied with what I wrote. And that was interesting that this was a moment I experienced, and I was able to put it to paper, and it came out this poem.
Hmm. It reminds me a little bit of some of Jane Hirschfield's nature poetry, and a lot of her nature poetry. Um, There's a poem of hers that's called something about this. I think it's called The Supple Deer. And I could be getting that wrong right now, but it's a shorter poem as well. And it's very much in the style that yours is, which is like, this is the moment. And there was not necessarily anything beyond that moment. It just kind of
Yeah.
captures the unique kind of essence of that one particular moment in time. And I love her work so much. So when I read this poem and I was like, this is definitely going to become a gather poem. It just felt
Thank you.
right. Um, and it just, I think there's like an effortlessness to it that you captured so beautifully, Nicole. Um, I'm curious about your writing practice. So you mentioned that sometimes it feels like word vomit when you're writing and you go
Yeah.
back and edit. Um,
Mhm.
Maybe this is an anomaly, this poem, but what is usually your revision process like, and how do you kind of parse through a poem?
Yeah, a lot of times while I'm writing the poem, I'll line edit as I go. But sometimes I let it all come out and just get all the words out and then go back through it and figure out what I want to stay and what can go.
Mm,
It's There are other times that I do have like running poems in my notes and I just start writing them and then leave them and come back and finish later. So I don't have a standard process. I kind of go with the flow, whatever I'm feeling at the moment. Like, oh, I do have time to sit and line edit this, or I'm going to come back to this later.
yeah. No, I think that makes sense. And I'm kind of the same way. Like sometimes I will write and then I will edit like while I'm writing, but oftentimes I think for me my process works a lot better if I can separate my editing from my writing. So if I can in this moment decide I'm just going to write, there's nothing that's going to kind of interrupt my writing at this moment. I'm not going to interrupt myself and then later get to the editing portion because I think it does require two different parts of the brain. I mean, scientifically, I don't
Yeah.
know if that's true or not, but I think that makes sense. I'm wondering, Nicole, hearing about your poetry as a practice and sort of from a craft perspective, what was it really that drew you to poetry or what invigorated you to pursue like this wild and abundant thing that we do, which is write poems?
Yeah, so when I was little, I fell in love with poetry. I was about actually I start to say the time was 5th grade, but that's when I started to write poetry. But I found a note in one of my like little school journals that said that I loved poetry in 2nd grade. And I think it's this the fact that it could maybe be like a story that is just this brief little glimpse of writing and that you can sit with it and read it and then be done with it and come back to it over and over again. I really liked just having this freedom on the page um, to be able to write. And when I was younger, I did write shorter poems. So um, more like along the lines of the looking up Layton's ones. And I started writing like a poem a day when I was in 5th grade. And I did that through high school. And then kind of took a hiatus in college and just wrote when I felt like it. But over the years, I think there have been different things that have brought me to poetry. Like I took a class in my 20s that was writing through photography, and I really loved that. And so we would look at photographs and then we would write either what we saw in the photo, what was captured in the image, or what was outside of the photograph. Like what were we not seeing? And we would tell the poem of that. So that kind of was my go-to for almost a couple decades, where that was most of my writing was photography based. And lately, I've started to get into more narrative poetry. I have a chapbook that's a collection of poems that is all about like toxic relationships and cheating and affairs and the demise of relationships. Being middle aged, I have a lot of friends who've gone through divorce, and so a lot of their stories were inspiring. And I think they were kind of keeping them close and like not sharing their experiences because they felt so alone and isolated in that. And then when they started reading these poems, they were like, oh, that's like me. Like, I feel like this. And it's like, yeah, everybody should be friends. All the women should be supporting each other because, um, it's a shared experience, even though you feel like you're all alone and isolated. And I think that really keeps me going with poetry is that being able to reach people and have them feel that connection and also have these opportunities to tell like maybe little stories or maybe glimpses of a moment like the looking up Lighton's poems. I like that it can kind of transport you to another world almost or another person's experience and you feel what they're feeling and that helps you feel less alone.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm smiling, Nicole, because you said that lately you've been getting into narrative poetry,
Mhm.
and I don't want to spoil too much. I actually, by the time this podcast goes live, it won't be spoiling anything, but
Okay.
that is one of the themes in the
Ooh,
next round of Gather. So
can't
uh,
wait.
we're gonna get into how to tell a story in a poem, and I I know your poetry is very much in that vein. So I'm excited to read what you come up with in the next month or so.
Yay. I
Um,
can't wait. I've been missing Gather so much.
I know, me too. I'm excited to get back to writing. And honestly, just chatting with other Gather poets is like my favorite thing in the world. So it's just such
Yes.
a treat. It's a treat to hear you read your poem, Nicole, but it's also a treat to just to explore the inside of your brain for a little moment. I know that sounds kind of gruesome, but
No.
there's this, I think there's this like shared imaginative space when poets talk about these things, because maybe it's different for other poets, but for me, there are very few people that I know, like even like in my small town, who I could have
Mhm.
this kind of conversation with. Um, and so it feels really special that we've all found each other, you know?
Yes, and being able to, like, sit and write with each other, it's like it's magic, and it also
Hmm.
is you just, like, feel the energy and creativity and inspiration just oozing off each other, even, like, virtual. So, I am so
Yeah.
thankful for these opportunities to be with other poets. I always kind of was looking for a community of people to write with because I really enjoyed that part of, in college writing and workshopping, and I think I said this in a letter to you once, that it wasn't even as amazing as Gather.
Oh,
Mhm.
yeah. Honestly, I feel that way too. Just the in person sometimes I think has this like sort of academic feel to it, and I really love how Gather is like rigorous in craft, but less of an academic feel. And I think that just like, yeah, it feels right. Um, Speaking of feelings, Nicole, my last question for you, and you can think about this for a second, so I don't want to put you too much on the spot, but if you were to want the reader to be left with one feeling after reading Looking Up Lightens, um, what would that feeling be?
Joy. I
Hmm.
I think it's joy. I want them to be able to step out of the chaos, step out of the noise, let that go, truly experience the moment and the beauty and joy.
Hmm. It's such a good word. It was one of my words of the year a few years ago, actually. I do like I don't know if you do this too, Nicole, but I pick a word, or this year I cheated and I picked two words, but I choose a word to try to represent my year. And oftentimes it's very inaccurate because like we make plans and then,
Yeah.
things change. But
Mhm.
I remember a few years ago, joy was my word. It's one of my favorite words. And I definitely feel that when I read your poem. So I just want to
Oh,
thank you so
good.
much for coming on and chatting about your poem, Nicole.
Thank you.
It's been so much fun learning about the process behind your writing and also the story behind Looking Up Lightens. For anyone listening to the Gather Poets podcast right now, Nicole's poem will be published this Friday. You can find her full interview, written interview, on our Substack as well, gatherpoets.substack.com. And if you're interested in connecting with Nicole, Nicole, why don't you tell us about an exciting upcoming project you have in the works, and where we can connect with you online?
Yeah. So you can find me at Nicole Z Writes on Instagram and at Coley Writes on Substack, although I'm not as active on Substack as I am on Instagram. And I have a my first full-length poetry collection coming out. Yeah, I'm so excited. It's going to be published in August, but pre-sales start in April. So that's pretty much going to be um, my life is talking about pre-order my book, pre-order my book. It's called Motherhead, and it spans the experience of being a mother.
Hmm. I know there are so many listeners out there right now who are going to resonate with your poetry, not only with Looking Up Lightens, but also with your book coming out. Thank you for joining us for this episode of the Poetry Table. If you're curious about Gather, feel free to find us on Instagram at Gather Poets, and we look forward to connecting.